You know, I hear people wonder if the watertight business is here to stay. Pros, who's been in the game for a long time, say it definitely is. And that's because projects are getting bolder in design and construction is taking place in ever more challenging terrain. In today's episodes of Concrete Injection Made Easy, I talk to Nick Chittenden, Regional Manager for Master Builders Solutions in the Middle East and Africa, who's been in the game for over 25 years. Nick gives us a holistic view of the construction business and provides a checklist of best practices. Tune in to this episode and you'll find out how to nail your risk management process when it comes to waterproofing, how you can take advantage of the crossover between two industries, tunneling and deep basement, and more. Hello Nick, great to have you on. This is the very first interview of podcast Concrete Injection Made Easy. So you are a brave man.
Thank you, Matthias.
We met the other day on LinkedIn. You were commenting on my posts about some injection and concrete repair topics.
Yes.
So I understand this is your business, this is your life. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you find interesting to comment on my post?
Okay, so your post was on a joint in a concrete structure below the ground.
Yeah.
And my business for the last 20 plus years, 25 plus years, is been in tunneling and underground construction, both in the civil engineering and mining engineering business.
Okay.
And it never ceases to amaze me the misunderstandings that main contractors and clients have about the business of injection and grouting in general. And it's not a rocket science, but
no, it's not.
And it's not a black art either. There's some very basic logic behind what is done, and very importantly, and more importantly, and the thing I think that we need to highlight in our discussion today is that it's not something that you can just allocate all the responsibility to a subcontractor to go away and produce miracles. There needs to be a partnership with all of the people involved.
I like this expression. It's not a rocket machine or rocket science, but if we considered it to be a rocket science, maybe we would all pay more attention on this to build it more properly. And that's it.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
You are a British man, but living where? Somewhere abroad.
So yeah, I'm based in Dubai. I've been here for about 12 years now.
12 years.
Okay. Yeah, 12 years.
So what made you living there? What made you to move down?
My business, my company asked me to come here.
Okay.
I was working at the time in South Africa on the Gautrain project.
Okay, so you already were living abroad, not in your...
I've lived abroad since 1994.
I see. All right.
So my first stint overseas was in Taiwan, and then China, Singapore, 6 years in South Africa after that.
Okay. So
then
Dubai seems to be the closest place to Europe. It's only
I did
6 hours in plane from Warsaw.
Yeah, exactly. I did a few years in Switzerland with another company, not Master Builder Solutions. And then I came back to Master Builder Solutions after I did my master's in tunneling at the University of Torino.
I see. Wow. And it was the year of?
Which one?
the master's.
2005, 2006.
2005, 2006. So it's I was finishing
And
my studies in 2008, but it took
okay,
me
cool.
more than 5 years because I was, a student. I was taking all the advantages of being a student at the time. So, but I must say that I was in Nantes for a scholarship called what's the name of it? Okay, I don't remember. Well, I spent 6 months in Nantes in France. It was a great time. Actually, it was
Excellent.
the best time during the whole studies. Being abroad, meeting the whole great amount of people from all over the world. That is why I speak English, I guess, thanks to this visit. Okay.
And is that
Yeah.
where you learned injection?
Nope. I learned injection later on while I was working as a product manager for injections in a German producer of
Okay,
chemistry. So
another one,
it was
a different one.
2011, 2012. But also, again, English was the main factor that allowed me to get the job and to learn these things abroad.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah. Since you stay at home, we
Yes.
all know why. This is a great occasion, so we can use this time to have this conversation on leakages, on concrete repair, on our business. I'll bet that you go and visit many job sites around Dubai, and I've been there in December last year, so I know that there are many job sites around to visit. What kind of problems do you see there? What kind of problems do they face every day?
Okay, I mean, I don't see as many nowadays as I used to when I was dedicated to just the UAE business. But I mean, typically it's a repeat of the same issues all the time. I mean, when we consider any construction process regarding waterproofing, it's, let's say, 30% is the materials, 30% is the detailing and the design, if you like, and then 40% is the execution.
Okay.
So if we look at it all the way from the shoring, if you've got a design for a piled structure that demands that you have the overlapping piles with the hard pile, soft pile, and the piles don't overlap, then you have the potential for a leakage. So one of the things that I saw a lot very early on in Dubai, I think mainly because of the rush of construction, was very poorly done piling works with gaps in between the piles. Now, that could be for a number of reasons, but something you've seen. And the subcontractor during construction would have the dewatering turned off, and they would finish the job for the sub basement and then hand it over to the main contractor, at which point they would turn the dewatering off. And then you'd start seeing where the leaks were coming. And at that point, there was very little knowledge about what the subcontractor had done and why they'd had a problem and why they had maybe, there was washout in the concrete, or they had hit a boulder, or whatever it may be. But there wasn't that information passed on. So
I just wanted to ask the question why other people don't know what happened before. So this is the lack of the idea how to pass the information between subcontractors.
Yes, absolutely. So you didn't have this continuity within the project management of the building and the basement, right from the excavation. So it was like this, the excavation was one part of the project, building the structure inside it was a separate part, and they didn't meet. So then when you came to doing the waterproofing, that was completely separate from the shoring. And yet, if the shoring was good, it made the waterproofing very easy. And if the shoring was really bad, it made the waterproofing almost impossible. And also, if you had the dewatering still on and you put the waterproofing up, and then you put the basement structure inside it and you built the building and then you turn the dewatering off, if you then start to say, well, where's the leak? You're looking at a car park wall, an off-shutter finish, and it's leaking, but nobody knows what happened in the foundation engineering, which was
like 2 years earlier.
4 years, exactly. So this disconnect between the separate sections. And of course, at that stage, everybody looks for either the material supplier, which is the role that I was taking with Master Builder Solutions, or the specialist applicator.
So we are in the situation that someone realizes it's impossible not to notice that we have a leakage.
Yeah.
What do they do? The whole building is almost completed. Sometimes it's even sold. There are people starting to use this to park their cars, and so on and so on. And there are several leakages all around the car park floor visible.
Typically,
what do they do?
Well, as I say, there's different approaches, and it'll depend on the what the waterproofing package was at the beginning. So if it was a supply and apply with a warranty and the applicator took responsibility for providing a watertight structure, then that applicator would start to work. Now, quite often, they wouldn't bring in a specialist crew for doing that work. It would be, and this is one of the frustrations that I used to see a lot, was the guys would try to deal with the problem just where you see it. So in the final wall, whereas the problem may be
sometimes the final wall where the water is visible is almost exactly in the center of the building, which is 100% not the place where the water gets into the construction.
Exactly, and that's trying that imagination to look behind the wall and try to picture, now where is the void, where is the water coming from? Because injection, like we said at the beginning, isn't rocket science.
No.
All injection is filling a water path with an engineered material that will seal that water path and prevent the water from coming through it. Now, to identify the characteristics of that water path, that void in the structure somewhere, you need to have some imagination. You need to have the as-built drawings. You need to have an understanding of the shoring works. What was the waterproofing system that was put in place? What was the quality assurance done on that waterproofing system? And the detailing, as we mentioned just now, 30% product, 30% detailing, 40% execution. So those aspects, the quality assurance, the quality control, the documentation, and all the way back to the shoring and the ground conditions. So all of those have an impact on what you're going to do to most effectively stop the water coming into the structure at the end of the day.
I can say that here in Poland it works like that. I answer the phone. There is a management of the real estate asking me to come to see because they have leakages in many places, 2 floors, parking place, and I start to ask questions about like if they have any documentation, if they can send me some pictures describing these leakages. And the first answer is no documentation. Of course, they can send me the pictures, but it's better for me to come over to see it in my own eyes,
Of course.
because they cannot answer any other questions, not on the phone. They see the situation is being too much complex. This is how it looks like here, and well, what you say is exactly the same.
And quite often we're not the first person to be called. We're the second or third, because they've tried to go with the initial approach of just dealing with the surface. So maybe
with a
drilling
paint
some short holes. Yes, paint is one. Some cementitious waterproofing materials is another one.
These fast reaction ones.
Fast reacting, and also just drilling short holes and using one component polyurethane. Now, that product is appropriate in certain situations, but you still have to put it into the right place.
Absolutely.
And to define that, you need to understand what's happening behind the wall. What is the parameters of the crack? Where are the reinforcing? Why has it cracked? Etc. etc. Is it concrete issue? Are there voids in the concrete? I mean, one of the biggest jobs that we had right at the very, very beginning of my time in Dubai was and unfortunately, the other factor on all this is you can't mention the names of a lot of these projects.
I was just about to ask it.
So I can't tell you that, but just to say that it was a diaphragm wall, which was supposed to be watertight, and my colleague who was dealing with it at the time could fit his arm up to his shoulder into the hole. And of course, and of course there's water coming through that as soon as you turn the dewatering off. So you need to have an approach to be able to deal with that. And coming back to the shoring and the preparation is that, where you've got piles as part of the shoring system, for example, and you have a high water table, you can reasonably plan and expect that you may have a problem later on.
Yep.
So why not actually start that planning process
right from the beginning, knowing this?
Engage with injection experts. Either look at trying to seal the rock behind the shoring with, let's say, injection of a low viscosity cementitious or colloidal silica type material. And if you need to help rehabilitate the shoring, the diaphragm wall, or the piles, make sure you've got a good quality shotcrete subcontractor available. It could be either wet or dry. I prefer the wet shotcrete system myself, which will enable you to help control the water into drain pipes and then deal with the situation once you've got the water controlled into a pipe.
Well, yeah, at least you will exactly know where the water is coming from and you can control it. But the first idea of, like you mentioned, the injection of the rock would be my favorite one, because I like injection solutions. Somehow, like when I compare the painting of the wall, which is totally everything visible, no imagination at all needed, and injection, so I choose injection. But that would be one of the very limited examples of the situation where the injection is needed and it's not considered to be the money loss. It would be in the budget to help to solve the situation.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because that's one of those applications where you've got two industries that work quite remotely from each other. So you've got the tunneling industry and the deep basement industry. And, at the end of the day, there's a crossover and an overlap when you start doing metros, for example, because an open cut station is just a deep basement. And the launching shaft of a TBM for a metro works, which is all tunneling, is just a deep basement quite often, and then utilized as part of the station thereafter. So there's quite a bit of overlap there. And using pre-excavation grouting can help in certain situations. Starting and finishing of the TBM in particular is one of those areas. So we did.
I had the chance to inject in those in the end of this tunneling in Warsaw in 2015. So
okay,
I was lucky to be there.
That's good. So you know what I'm talking about with this overlap. Now, one of the things in tunneling that is receiving a little bit more attention nowadays, I believe, is this pre-excavation grouting. And not to say that that should be used in every basement, but the concept of considering injection at the beginning to minimize and to plan the injection that may be needed at the end, it's like an insurance policy. So the more care and attention you take at the beginning, the more investment you take at the beginning, the less you have to spend later. And
even though you will have to spend some time later on,
of course,
well, at least you got the chance to spend less.
Absolutely. And you can also plan it, and you can engage with a specialist applicator early who can see the process through and maybe help highlight areas where you can avoid doing large volumes of unknown injection by doing a small volume of known injection.
Exactly.
To deal with it before you have these situations.
And the known is always better than unknown.
Of course. Well, it can be planned, it can be quantified, and
put
and
into the budget. Put into the budget, because it's I'm considered to be the money grabber who comes and say that this injection will cause this and that. Well, it's not my problem that someone had made bad decision 3 or 4 years earlier when I didn't even know that this construction site took place.
Yeah.
So
and there's always, and also the other challenge of course is there's always somebody who will offer a cheaper product at a cheaper application and probably not spend so much time doing the imagination and the investigation and the evaluation and the design side of it, and more time drilling short holes, placing a packer, injecting a cheap material and not sealing it, but getting paid for their time works.
I really wonder, and I would love to see you asking this series of questions, investigating the problem on the site, like how much time do this conversation should last to really make you convinced that you gathered all necessary information?
Well, it's again sort of where I was going with it from the beginning is it's all part of a risk management approach, and every project should have a risk management in there. And part of that risk management is what if, and at some point they're going to have to say, what if the shoring fails? What if the waterproofing fails? What if we get a leak coming through our basement structure? And all of this should happen before you turn the dewatering off. And if you can do that and you can manage that process, then you minimize any surprises. And that's the insurance risk management approach to that both the material supplier and the specialist applicator would like to approach, because I don't get a call from a company saying, I've got a leak, you need to fix it tomorrow because I've got to hand it over next week.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's great. I want somebody who wants to buy my products, then that's fantastic. But if I don't have them in stock, or I don't have the right type of materials, so we're then trying to use something that's not really ideal for the application, then you have a sub-ideal situation. So it's much easier to be able to plan it, to be able to have somebody say, look, I don't know if I'm going to need it, but this is the situation. This is the structure we've got. This is what we've built. This is what's going to happen. We're going to be turning the dewatering off at this point in time. And we've got a couple of situations where we think possibly in the risk management, the what if said, we may have this scenario. And then we take that forwards. And I can say, right, we need to get this amount of this material in stock. We need this amount of this material available if you need it. And if you don't, oh, great, we'll take it somewhere else. But planning.
And cooperation with between you being a supplier, and not only the supplier, because you also have a huge knowledge, so you can just help them to solve the situation. And between you and contractors and subcontractors, this cooperation.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
how does it work in Dubai? I mean, who invites who on the job sites? Is it you that invite subcontractors? Or?
So I have a couple of specialist applicators within the Dubai market. And we like to have, let's say, 2 or maximum 3 different applicators, because one may not be available. So we want to be able to answer our customers' requirements. And either we bring them a job. So let's say it's a waterproofing project where we are actually looking at supplying the waterproofing as well. Okay. And one of the things that we will always do is try to engage with all parties and take the approach that I suggested with regards to planning the what if. So, if you accept that and you spend the most amount of money on the waterproofing with the backup systems available so that you can, if you need, solve any problems that happen, so you can, deal with, what happens if, your pure post-curative maintenance mechanisms. So if you've got, let's say, a loose laid PVC compartmentalized with double layers of PVC membrane right the way across the structure, then that gives you the best opportunity possible to identify where the leak is coming from and have a system available, planned, to be able to deal with it. So that's the easy one. Less easy is when it's another applicator, another contractor, who hasn't been able to solve the problem that they tried first of all, and then the client phones you and says, what can you do here? And that one usually comes through the specialist applicators. They come to us and say, we've got this application, we're going to use your products, come and have a look at the job with us, and let's work out together what's the right product and how we're going to do it.
Yeah, my third question I ask on the first phone call from the site is, was there any other previous tries of injections that failed?
Yes, of course.
Because it happens a lot that there was the first try, meaning the one that was designed.
Yes.
There was the second try, meaning first try of injection.
The cheapest.
And the fastest, the cheapest, someone was on the site already doing some electricity jobs or someone found by accident. And the third one, which is in the situation where this situation has to be solved now or yesterday.
Always yesterday.
Or the day before yesterday. So this is my third question. Was there any other injection jobs that had been used? Well, unfortunately, many times this question is answered yes. There were those situations. So again, you don't in this situation you have to dig even further with another questions, because you have to find out not only how the construction has been built, but what kind of injection materials and how have been used. So this amount of questions being needed to be answered is even longer. So
Absolutely.
I must say that when I was in December, as I mentioned last year, in Dubai in December last year, I was on the Burj Khalifa on the 125th floor. No, I was standing there. Everyone
Yes.
goes there, so of course
Of
we
course.
were there as well. And I was looking at the city around me, and I had only one idea of look at this whole buildings. Every single building has, of course, the parking place.
Yeah.
The parking place is, of course, underground.
Most
Just
of them,
imagine,
yes.
Mateusz, I was studying to myself how many parking places, how many possible leakages you can find there. So being on holiday in Dubai, and I was only thinking about concrete repair, leakages, parking places, my wife was like, I can't listen to you anymore. I won't go with
And
you. And
it's interesting. I mean, there is, we've been very lucky this year. We had quite a lot of rain at the beginning of the year. And
this year, 2020.
2020. And that's sort of brought up quite a few projects that have reached that stage, and then dewatering has been turned off, or the dewatering has reached its capacity, and the water levels have started to rise because of the rain and what have you. And projects come on and start saying, we've got a leak.
I love when it's raining. I really
doesn't
love.
happen here very often.
Well, a couple of years ago, I was really wondering if any, injection resin are being sold in Dubai, since it's a desert. So, at the end, I found out that maybe it's desert, but right next to the sea. So
yes,
you still have water.
Oh yes, exactly. And you've got to, of course, when you start dealing with that, the pressures for most of those basements are not sort of in the same level as you are dealing with for the tunneling applications. But the types of materials it's still important to understand the type of materials that you have available and what you want them to do. So again, a little bit of pre-planning and imagination is useful when you consider the materials as well. There's usually a one component type system, which is what we're talking about, where you use a pump with a single piston, usually a piston pump, or a two component system, where you have a single motor with two pistons, providing usually a 50-50
the mixing ratio is 1 to 1. So, yeah.
Normally, there are some that are a bit different, but typically that's the easiest one to work with. And I'm a big fan of the two component systems. I'm not sure.
PU based or the acrylic based?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Again, you use different systems for different applications. Again, it will require, do you need a structural repair? Do you need just water stopping? Are you trying to stop the water in the rock or in the concrete or in the interface between the shoring and the structure? It depends on what you're trying to do. And this is where the imagination and the black art comes in.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite part of this industry, the imagination, and just knowing imagination, like where the resin is flowing through this little holes and
Exactly.
puckers. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, you know, as I say, from the material side of things, you've got high viscous materials like the polyurethanes, which won't flow easily, but will react very quickly and
In
will
contact with the
foam.
water, yeah, showing foam.
Well, this is again why I like the two component, because I can control the reaction to what I want, and I'm not restricted to waiting for it to hit the water. So I can actually react
That's true,
my two
yeah.
component by having a controlled addition of water and appropriate accelerator depending on the temperature in the part A of my two component system. And I can adjust that according to what I picture in my head as the problem I'm trying to solve. So if I want it to come out and be foaming within seconds, then I have a longer delivery pipe after the mixing, and I add some water, 1%, 0.5%, whatever it requires. And by the time it's coming out of the end, it's already foaming and reacting. On the other hand, if I'm trying to deal with a very, very fine joint with just seepage water, and I want the material to flow for a long way, then the polyurethanes aren't really going to be the ideal materials. I want something that's got a lower viscosity so I can push the material over a longer distance. And there I would prefer to use the acrylics. And at the
do you use acrylics when injecting the cracks in the concrete?
For what application?
For watertighting.
Yes, I probably would look at using an acrylic for that sort of application. But again, what you're trying to do there is stop the water in that concrete structure. So you have to have something with a fairly low viscosity, but at the same time, the material from any point will always inject in a theoretical sphere. So if it's in a crack, then that sphere becomes a disc. And it's a disc that continues to grow. Now, as soon as there is a point of least resistance, i.e. the back of the concrete, for example, if you've got, and there must be a leak point there somewhere, because that's where the water's coming in. It may not be directly in contact with that injection point you're using at that point. It's going to start flowing at that point, and it's not going to continue flowing out. So at the same time as having low viscosity, you also want to be able to control that flow quite specifically and adaptably. So you maybe want to stop it in 5 minutes. And it's much easier and better if you can stop it through the setting time of the grout rather than just using a really stiff thixotropic grout, because that tends to make it harder to flow. So,
and then you have to use higher pressures on the pump.
Exactly.
And then you can destroy the concrete instead of repair it.
Exactly. So that's where the imagination, again, coming back to that whole story of trying to picture whether it's a crack, whether you're trying to seal the joint at the back of the concrete, in the shoring, in the waterproofing, wherever. So number of different applications. You've got to pick your point and then choose the right material for that. And I think, as we both agreed when we were discussing this podcast yesterday, no two job is the same.
No. I told you this story when I was a young employee of this German producer, and I believe it was the second month of my journey there. I told the manager that within these 2 months I haven't seen two same projects, and he laughed and said that within 20 plus years he haven't seen to the same project. So this is it. At least we won't bore. We are not get bored while working in this.
It keeps it interesting, that's for sure.
Tell me if you prefer to work on the new construction sites, the buildings being built from the at the beginning, or you prefer to repair existing buildings, older ones?
Well, there's no such thing as older ones in Dubai.
Okay. Good point.
So for that one,
well, at least there had to be buildings
not with deep level
7
basements.
years
Oh
old.
yeah, 7-10 years old. Yes, of course. I mean, the boom in Dubai has been going for a number of years now. And as always, when you start getting into scenarios where there's an over demand of building and an undersupply of materials and expertise, then standards can slip. So there's jobs and applications like that do come up. Yeah, it's always better to work on a premeditated approach for me, rather than something that's a disaster that wasn't done properly at the time, and they've been trying to solve the problem for 15 years and still haven't been able to deal with it, and then it arrives on your desk. Because you're on a hiding to nothing. You either put a price in that is you can guarantee you're going to be able to do it, and everybody goes, well, it's too expensive, or you put a price in that will win you the job, and you don't have enough materials, you don't have the time, you don't have the resources to actually be able to identify what the problem is and solve the problem. So it's always difficult. So because you don't know what's there. So the unknowns.
And
for
this
me,
unknowns it's like we are coming back to the beginning of our conversation. What to do to make the unknown known for everyone. So
for me, the best time for me to get involved in a project, or for the supplier of the potential waterproofing and injection system. Now, injection is just one part of the waterproofing system, because at the end of the day,
absolutely,
even if we're dealing with remedial works, those remedial works are only done to try to make good the waterproofing system that was put in place. So the ideal time for that is while the shoring is being done. So to actually take into account the concrete that is used in the shoring, the design of the shoring works, the water tightness. If you've got a shoring system that's 95% watertight, then when you put your waterproofing on the inside of it, it's only got to deal with the last 5%. And that makes life a lot easier. So taking each step of the process and getting involved really early, and making recommendations that are relatively cheap early to improve the whole process, dealing with really making sure that you deal with the joints properly, putting in reinjectable hoses, designing a really holistic approach to the waterproofing, and putting in that risk management discussion about what happens if.
Yeah, for me, one of the greatest examples of taking into consideration that what if is using the injection hoses. We can easily predict that the cold joint will leak. This is the great way for water to come into the structure, and we use injection hoses for years now. Do you find it easy to convince people, decision makers on the job site, to buy them, to use them, to install them?
Not really my core business at this moment in time, Matthias.
Okay.
Like I said, much more involved in trying to work with my colleagues on the injection to solve the problems. My colleagues in the waterproofing supply team are very much involved in that side of it. And
okay, so I'm already happy because I think I have found out Another good topic for another podcast episode.
And we would be quite happy to support and find somebody that's a real expert on that side of it to have a chat. And, you know, again, not all injectable hoses are the same. You really need to be able to have one that's re-injectable, because the ground moves, the ground changes, the water table changes. When you start building one building in a development of 5 or 6, the first one will be affected by the one being built next door to it. So everything changes. So you may have a building that's been there for 10 years and not got a leak, and then suddenly has a leak.
It starts.
And if you've managed your injectable, of course, were you talking about an old city?
Why? Because there are many really old buildings, like built after the Second World War.
Of course.
And they were dry for years, and suddenly second line, metro line, new buildings here and there, and the leakages and cracks,
Of
occur.
course.
So this is it. Like everything changes, even though it's underground and we can't see it as easy as we can see each other.
Yes. No, it's definitely a business that will not go away. And the more we can just engage with the people that are the owners of these projects to help them understand the process and the approach that makes their life easier, managing the construction right from the very beginning of the shoring and the excavation, all the way through, and taking a risk management, it makes everybody's life a lot easier.
I find this sentence like the headline of this conversation, because you seem to be very convinced that this is true. I agree. So there are two of us. Hopefully, there are some people listening to this conversation who also agree on that. Maybe we will change the world of construction sites for better.
We hope so. And of course, you know, we need to finish up with saying that it's not just the applicator, it's not just the material supplier, it's a teamwork of all of those parts together. And we can coordinate with each other. So if there is anybody out there listening, you know, feel free to get hold of your local Master Builders Solutions sales representative, and ask them about what they can do to help on the injection. I'm sure they will have applicators like yourself in different regions. And they need to get together and start the discussion really early.
Absolutely. If you can tell to our listeners how they can reach you if they have any further questions, you know, to discuss their own construction sites, a problem on the sites, like how can we reach you to have this contact?
Well, the best way to reach them, because obviously not everybody is going to be based in Dubai, and not everybody is going to be able to get hold of me directly by email. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there.
Okay.
And
this is the way we met, by the way.
This is the way we ended up connecting, which works very, very well. But also, I would say is, look, just Google Master Builders Solutions, and you will find the local website for your region.
I think that
within that, you can find the appropriate person to talk to about injection. And if you want to deal with it very early, then ask for the underground construction representative for your region, and they will be an expert on injection as well, on the material side. I should just point out that also for the last 17 or 18 years, we've been running workshops held in a tunnel location underground in Switzerland.
Okay.
And really setting the standard for education and training, both internally and externally.
So you were inviting applicators for over there
applicators
to have a
and
meeting,
absolutely
and training.
So for you, I would suggest that you need to speak to your underground construction sales representative in Poland, and just say to him, I'd like to come on the next workshop. Unfortunately, they had to be cancelled this year, which is why we're doing this now. But the next ones will be held in October. And this is an excellent place to share information, talk to other experts in the field, not just talking
meet other
to
people.
Exactly, not just talking to Master Builder Solutions, but all of our customers, and they all have their own ways of doing things.
How many people do you invite for such a meeting?
We will go through between 150 and 200 in each workshop.
Wow, that's a lot of people. So this is a lot of people.
We have a team of
knowledge to be
20 to 25 experts in the industry who deal with different types of injection approach, all the way from tunneling, pre-excavation injection using microfine cement, all the way through to the use of injection technologies for high performance anchor bolting. So huge range of applications.
So you can easily say that everyone will find something for something interesting.
Exactly.
Right.
So and these have been basically filled up and sold out for the last 17 years. So you can imagine how many people have gone through these workshops.
Wow. And I haven't been there yet, so I have to. So I'm even more happier that we managed to meet and have this conversation. Thanks a lot for this conversation. If there's any question you would like to ask to our listeners, so they can, leave a comment or say something to you on LinkedIn, or leave a comment on LinkedIn, because I think I will put a post saying that this conversation has been released.
Great, yeah,
so everyone can listen to it. So what would be the question for our listeners to answer?
I think it would have to be challenge us. We've not tried to tell anybody how to do the job, but rather focus on the processes. If anybody's got any experience or anything that they can add to that, then we would love to hear it.
Absolutely.
And the big thing with injection is, because every job is different. The more jobs you see, the more tools you have in your bag to be able to solve the next problem. So
I agree.
It would be the question would be a request, would be, tell us your challenges, tell us what you've got, tell us what you've seen, and we can all learn from it.
Absolutely. Thanks again for the conversation. Thanks for the time spending with me.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I'm really happy, and see you next time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mitches. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.